Hi, everyone. We're live here in Franklin, Michigan. I'm Carrie Lazat. I'm a camera ready coach. I do video production, and I'm volunteering to lead and direct some of these village chats behind the scenes. So I'm going to turn it over to Pam and the other candidates, and they're going to talk a little and direct a little bit about their platform. Village chats behind the scenes. So, and we can take your questions live. So if you want to type them into the chat, we'll put them up for you, and I'll do the best I can to keep up and manage the technology. So have fun, everybody, and we look forward to hearing what our candidates have to say.
Thank you, Carrie. This is Pam Hansen. I'm the current president of the Village of Franklin in Michigan, and really happy to be here. My colleagues are Mike Seltzer and Mark Hanke. They'll be able to introduce themselves in just a second. What I'd like to do is just welcome you to this experiment. We're running our election for village president and trustees is lively this year. And we're experimenting with a way to have conversations with you using different kinds of social media. So welcome, and I'd like to introduce Mike Seltzer.
Well, hi, everybody, and thanks, Pam. Happy to be here. Yes, this is sort of an experiment. We've not done this one before, but we are here live in Franklin Village and here to listen and respond to any of your questions and comments. It's been a spirited few weeks here in the village. I'm pleased to report that we're making great progress on our streetscape plan. Something that's been on everybody's minds. I'm sure there'll be comments about that tonight. But anyway, I look forward to talking with you further. And of course, as Pam indicated, we are all running for re-election in my case, a re-election in Pam's case, and hoping that we can bring Mark to the table. And I'd like to introduce my friend, Mark Hanke.
Thank you, Mike. Carrie, thank you so much for hosting. This is exciting. Never done anything like this before. So I am interested in hearing questions from everyone in the village, all corners. Bring them on, and between Mike and Pam and myself, we'll answer the questions and try and shed some information about what is happening in the village, what we know, and what our plans can be in the future.
Well, let me start out with just to throw out a topic. Mike, you mentioned the streetscape. Everybody in the village is aware of it, certainly, and extremely inconvenienced in some cases. I was meeting with the contractors today, and looks like so far, if the weather holds, we're on path to finish by mid-November. There are a couple things that may or may not get done, but I've had the pleasure of walking around the village today, picking out trees and picking out spots for the trees to go in that will restore our tree canopy. So I'm happy to take any questions about the streetscape, as I'm sure Mike Seltzer and Mark Hanke are tonight as well. What are you hearing about the streetscape in your bicycling around the village, Mark?
So thanks, Pam. So I made a challenge to myself to meet everybody in the village, to ride every street in Franklin Village. I don't know how many miles that is. So it is a daunting challenge. I did about 10 miles just recently. But what I'm hearing about the streetscape, first off, there are questions about financing. Now, I know it costs a fair amount of money, but I understand it was really well budgeted, that we're running good. So Pam, maybe you can shed some information about how it's financed and how that's working.
How the streetscape is financed?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. I can do that. In just a very short answer, in 2015 and 16, the then Village Council approved a millage. We sold bonds, and that is how we're paying for the paving in the village. All the paving is done except for the last third of a mile. So we have some funds remaining from $13 or so million. I think around $1 million. The other main source of funds is what we call Act 51 road funds. These are funds for roads that are given back to cities that are really generated from the sales tax in Michigan. The preponderance of the money is going to be from those funds. Those are restricted funds. In other words, they must be used for roads, local roads, and they must be used in some portion of those funds must be used up in a certain amount of time. We have the cash in the bank, and that's the most important thing. We don't have to go to the taxpayers to ask more money.
That's excellent. I see a question for you, Pam.
Let's see, there's a Facebook user that says, Pam, how are you going to keep the historic charm with all these changes you are making? One thing I think that's a really good question, and whoever is asking it, thank you for doing so. And I'm going to assume that both Mike and Mark are going to answer it as well. So first of all, I'm not making the changes. The council's making the changes with the permission of the voters. That's really important. I think that the historic charm and historic character of the village will actually be enhanced because of the streetscape. If you think about the elements of the streetscape, I've already mentioned the tree canopy. That tree canopy is, we're working hard on it. That tree canopy existed up until the early 70s in Franklin when all the elms died. And unfortunately, the trees were never replanted. So most people who live in the village now don't even know that that's true. The other thing is that we are going to repave the road. So I don't know that anybody has any issues in terms of historic charm about that. We're restoring the sidewalks that exist right now. Those sidewalks have been there. We didn't feel a mandate to remove them. The other thing is we're going to add a little landscaping, and this is appropriate landscaping to a village that doesn't have a water supply. So the plants were chosen because they're durable, in most cases native. Let's see what else. And we are fixing drains. So if you spend time in the village, you'll know that we have some problems with drains. We have drains under the pavement, but in some cases they are falling apart because they're old, and we're replacing them. But that's pretty much what we're doing. And if you've got a specific question about historic character or charm, I'd love to be able to address that. Thanks.
I would like to chime in on this one as well. There's been a lot of talk about Franklin and the historic character that we all enjoy. For me personally, I live in an 1840s house. So I definitely am a preservationist, and I definitely appreciate the historic aspects of the village. But as time has marched on, we have been devoted to being progressive and keeping up our historic Franklin, and this streetscape plan is really designed to enhance what we already have. It's really not a wholesale change at all. It's simply adding some levels of security, providing safe pathways so that people can get to the village center easily and safely. There's a recent interview that I did, and we were talking about this, and throughout the broadcast, we showed scenes of people that were trying to make their way and navigate up and down Franklin Road with baby carriages and dogs, and it's a dangerous path. And as the season changes right now, as we begin to lose daylight, in another couple of weeks, it's going to be dark at 4:30 in the evening. And Franklin Village is known as a very dark community. We don't have any street lighting. We don't have any way for people to comfortably access our downtown shops, our grill, our dry cleaners. I mean, it's a dangerous place to be. So a lot of the things that we're doing are designed with safety and concern for our villagers and their guests. And so, but we are definitely trying and will commit to preserving Franklin Village as a historic destination. That's something we all cherish about it.
That's nice. Mike, so one thing they're adding on that streetscape, there's going to be 8 streetlights, historic era streetlights, and 10 pedestrian safety lights there. So those streetlights, as I understand, are going to be historic in nature, fitting to the time. I did see a question for myself pop up about asking myself, how will your engineering background and management experience help if I get elected to council? So thank you for asking. My background, 31 years in automotive manufacturing. I've worked in the plants. I've run assembly lines. So the one thing I would say in terms of I'm bringing to the table here is I've been able to be successful in manufacturing, which is a tough environment, all sorts of different individuals, and getting them to work together. So when you work in automotive manufacturing, it is extremely accountable in terms of what can get done. So when I think about the different groups of people in Franklin and the different opinions they have, we still have to have a loving and wonderful village. That's the end result. So I'm going to bring to the table a lot of people skills. I mean, I've got great analytic skills. I can do all sorts of analysis on what makes sense financially, but tying the people together, that is going to be a big challenge for everyone on the council so we can get along and make progress. And there's some other questions popping up.
Let me just check in on one thing, Mark. Actually, this is Streetscape related. We followed SHPO guidelines for the design of this downtown. SHPO is an acronym for State Historic Preservation Office, and we followed their guidelines. Interestingly enough, one of the guidelines for fixtures, in this case our pole lights, is that they advised us strongly against trying to replicate any particular era. If you think about Franklin, it's many eras of history, even though it was started in 1828 and incorporated in 54. There's lots of buildings that come from different points in time. The light fixtures that we've chosen are actually smooth, somewhat contemporary light fixtures that are a shepherd's hook. Kind of they go like this, and then there's downlights onto the sidewalk so that we can have a dark sky in the village. But they will not be reflective of any particular point in time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
How soon will the streetlights be active?
Sorry?
When will the streetlights be turned on?
Let's see. They are ordered. The electrical conduit is in, and I think they're going to be it'll be one of the last things to come in this year. I'm looking around November 1st, probably.
For those in the audience that haven't seen the visuals, I urge you to go to the Village of Franklin website and take a look at the visuals that were created months ago. A lot of people have misconceptions about what this is going to look like. And I got to say, I'm just so proud that we're finally doing this. This has been on our plate for probably close to a decade. And so, we can't control all of the buildings. We can't control the landlords. We can't control the tenants, but we can control the environment, and we can do so in a pragmatic and logical way. And I think once villagers see the completed project, any pushback that we've had is going to seem absurd and ridiculous. And I'm looking forward to that.
People probably look back and say how wonderful it was. I did see a question pop up.
Okay.
Mark, there are few people seem calling every village council meeting argue a point, and they get a disproportionate amount of attention. So that's fair. Then what are you going to do to make sure we represent all the people of Franklin? So that's an excellent question. I have been calling into the village council meetings myself, and that's a fair statement. There are people who make sure they have their comments loudly stated and very pointedly at times to make their point. Franklin Village, it is as small as we are, we're still a big community. We have over 3,000 people living here. So whoever is on the village council in November after the election, we have to represent all the villagers, not just the most vocal. So, might does not equal right. It doesn't, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. That's fair. So we have to make sure we understand and we listen to everybody in the village. So what I have done personally is, like Pam had mentioned, I ride my bike every day, and I'm trying to hit every single street. So it's nice warm weather out still. There are lots of people outside, and it's a very COVID-friendly way to get around the village and put your mask on and stay more than 6 feet apart. But you can talk to people, and so many people have never had a trustee or candidate go up and talk to them and just ask them what's important and talk about ideas. So I have so far talked to hundreds of people. So I'm enjoying it. This is actually very enjoyable to do. I will continue doing this every day, but I want to enter, I want to win the election. And when I'm there, I want to know that I've heard from as many people as possible.
I see a question for you.
Yeah, I can't quite, would I publicly comment not to use social media to censor opposing views? I don't use social media to censor opposing views at all. In fact, I'm probably one of the more outspoken members of the council. I have seen a tremendous level of vitriol on Nextdoor. Nextdoor was run as a community outreach, and it was managed by a longtime and well-respected villager, Jane Poland, for, gosh, I think probably close to a decade. Yeah. And then suddenly we now have 10 people involved in censoring and editing comments. And I don't know what's brought this on. I think it's probably COVID related. I think people are just stuck at home and they're spending far more time than they normally would. And we've read some things that are frankly just insulting to us. I was called a politician in a post today. And you know what? I got to tell you, I resent that implication. We are volunteers. For those of you that don't really understand that we here on the Village Council have dedicated ourselves for the betterment of our community. You may not agree with everything that we have to say, but we are here as tireless champions for the community. And I'm pretty much on the record about the things that I believe in, and I don't waffle and I don't evolve. I'm certainly willing to listen and respect other people's opinions, but I've been very strong on the sidewalks proposal and on water for this village. And you can go back through the records and hear the comments that I've made at council meetings. So the truth is we are tireless champions for the community. We are volunteers. We're not politicians. We're not professionals. And we're doing this because we love and care for our community. And I, for one, am always open to listening to people. I've given out my cell phone publicly 1,000 times, and I reach out to people, even people that make harsh criticisms to us. I reach out to them privately and ask them if they're willing to have a one-on-one conversation like adults. And those who do, I respect. And those who don't, I'm sorry for you. So I am totally committed to transparency and to fair communications. I don't think we do anything on council to censor anybody.
All right, I see a question from Craig Weingarten.
Yeah, so what's the plan to bring city water to Franklin? There's rumors of poor water quality in certain areas. Let's start out with a comment that you made today, Craig, or rather Mark, because I think you made a comment that you talked to a resident that has 3 wells and is struggling with adequate water. That'll be a good launching pad for this discussion.
So that's right, Pam. So I was traveling south of 13 Mile, and there were 2 families talking, and they raised the subject of city water. And I have my well system is I'm perfectly happy with, but I do know city water is about 100 feet away from me in Buffalo Hills. But this couple, these families, and I'll point out, I'm not going to name names, but I'll certainly point out to the engineers, they have run out of water in their well. This one family, they're on their 3rd well. So imagine what a well costs, like a new well dug. Is that $20,000 starting price for a deeper well? Probably. They're in the 3rd well. The first house I talked to, they have to measure and manage their daily water draw. That's how some of the water tables are, and most Franklin doesn't realize this. So those people's voices, they are not heard, and that's quite an impact. Imagine if you had to try and sell a house that you have had 3 wells on already, or you have to limit what your water usage is, right? So that is going to severely impact your housing values. So one comment about city water, first, it should be optional. I mean, lots of people are perfectly happy with water. I am, and that's great. So whatever plan does get developed, it should be an optional plan for people to tie in. But when we get to the point that we can have city water, that's going to change in a positive way people's home prices. Because right now, everybody's home price in Franklin is impacted negatively because of well water. Lots of folks in the area have their perception of well water quality. That lowers the asking price. That impacts it. And agents, real estate agents, make their buyers aware of this. So there's some buyers just won't even go into Franklin because of that. That's going to hurt your well price, your home value prices. So all these things that are in that consideration. Certainly, it's a big ask to figure out how to do this in the entire village, and there are areas where it'll be easier than others. But there has to be a way to get some level of city water out there, especially for the folks who are running wells running dry.
If I can add just a quick comment about that, again, there's some misperceptions here. We brought this up last year during a period in which there was some minor contamination concerns in downtown. And at the time, I was advocating for the integration of a water pipe before we tore up Franklin Road, given the fact that we only do our roads every 15 to 20 years. We were about to go through the process of tearing up Franklin Road. So it made perfect sense for us to at least consider, without doing a whole major study and trying to do complete connectivity throughout the entire village, an option for the future. And that was simply laying a pipe in the ground on Franklin Road between 14 Mile and Scenic. And we had agreed as a council that we were going to do that and put that on the ballot this November. And then we got to language, and we had a meeting back in August in which 3 members of council, 2 of whom are running for re-election, decided that they did not feel comfortable going forward and giving villagers an opportunity to simply vote on whether they wanted water in the future. So for me personally, I don't care, because my well is fine, and I know a lot of people feel that way, but you have to look ahead. We have to progress and look at the future and see if that's something that we should be at least considering as an option for our villagers 15 years down the road, 20 years down the road, before we tear up Franklin Road again.
Mike, let me follow up, just to make sure, follow up on your point. So I want to make sure it's clear. So all you wanted to do was put it up for a vote, and some council members said, we're not going to put it up for vote even. They blocked it?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's all on the record. You can go back to last August council meeting minutes or the video. It's on the village website. You can see who was advocating for and who was advocating against a vote. That's all we're talking about, a vote by the public. And you know what? That's all we want. This is a democracy. We want people to be able to decide for themselves. It's not my decision. It's not Pam's, and it wouldn't be Mark's. It's the decision that would be made by the entirety of the community, and then we would decide which way we're going to go with that. So I saw a question from Connie.
Yeah. Okay. Given the abuse you take from some villagers and even some council members, how will you maintain your energy to govern following what is sure to be a difficult campaign?
It ain't easy, baby. It ain't easy. Like I said before, remember, we are volunteers, my friends. To criticize us is certainly within your right. But my God, be respectful. Some of the vitriol that we've heard in these council meetings, Pam, we've been doing this for a long time. We never had more than a handful or 2 handfuls of people come to Village Hall and want to speak to us. And generally, they were asking about a permit or an addition on their home or things like that. We've had 2 marathon 5-hour council meetings with over 90 people in queue to wag their fingers at us. Many supporters. I'm not saying that we aren't getting great support, because 80% are in favor of the things that we're working on. But the few people that are negative and and harsh. I mean, really, think about it. We're doing this for the love of our community.
I have some more to say about that, but I don't think that I'd like to go to Rick Notter's question. How do you balance those who want to honor the village charter versus the need to keep up with the positive changes needed in today's world, especially to be inclusive of newer residents? Rick's raising several issues in that question. One is about the charter, and another one is about welcoming new residents. And I'd like to, in the few minutes we have remaining, let's take both of those. I'll take a shot first at the charter. I'd like to suggest that we talk about that more at one of our future sessions, because I think it's a really it's an interesting topic. It really truly is. But for tonight, think about, so what is a charter? A charter is like our Constitution. The charter was drafted in 1954 when 1,000 people lived in Franklin, and it was developed by people who were following some state law at the time. We are what's called a home rule village, which means we make up our own laws, and as long as we're not in conflict with the state law or federal law, we're okay. We decide how we want to live in this village. One thing to I think understand about the charter, just like the Constitution, sometimes it needs to be updated. Some laws have been passed at the state level, which supersede ours. So we always have to make sure, if we want to draw a conclusion based on our charter, that we validate that that's actually the last word, because many times it isn't. And that was tested in the recent lawsuit. I think the other thing is that charters, and I mentioned the idea that it was drafted in 1954 for a reason. Those were different times. I happen to have been alive in 1954. And I will tell you, and we all know that as adults that things are different now. And over the years, we've had to amend the charter a few times, and I expect that it will be again. So let's talk about that more another time, because I think we're working as a council toward amending it in the spring, and I'd like to give it adequate time. Is that okay? And then I'd really like to talk about welcoming new residents, because to me that's a really serious concern.
So Pam, I'd like to take that on. That's the second half of that question. So one of the things I've learned, and I've only been here 20 years, so that in Franklin time that I'm a youngin', but I've been here 20 years and raised our family here. But there are lots of new families here, and they feel, and they're justified their feelings because that's their life that they're experiencing, is Franklin is not as welcoming, perhaps, as we may think it is. So we've been here in our neighborhoods for a long time, and we know folks around. New residents, and we're talking people 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, they have expressed themselves to me that they do not feel the inclusion that they actually thought was going to happen in the small town feel. And so we have to wake up. We have to realize this, that there are different perceptions about what Franklin Village is like. And that was eye-opening to me. It really was. So first, I give them a lot of respect for bringing that up. And we have to find ways to make sure that new residents feel welcome here. And it used to be simple things, just like welcome to Franklin introduction and learning to meet your neighbors. We think about Franklin as a small town village, right? Franklin Village is made of the villagers first and foremost. That's the number one thing. When we have a sense of community with our new residents and old residents, we'll be much better. So that is a top priority we have to take care of, understanding who's moving to our village, who has just moved here, and make sure they feel welcome.
I have to say a couple things here, if I may.
Sure.
That first of all, it kind of breaks my heart, because I came from the FCA. When I moved here in 1995, I immediately joined the FCA and very quickly elevated to the president of the FCA. And we were focused on social and wonderful family events. We were the people who created Music on the Green, that happened under my watch. Movies on the Green happened. The Roundup, obviously, 75 years was before me, but we kept it going. Those are the things that I cherish about our community. There's nothing like seeing our village green filled with people, families, young and old, enjoying music and movies and our
Having fun and laughing.
It was fun. And so getting into the political side of this was a real challenge, but I'm up to it and up for it. But it breaks my heart to hear that we aren't considered welcoming. I will say this. We live in a community of large lots. That's one of the attractions that people have about Franklin. It's harder. It takes an effort to get to know your neighbors. When I grew up as a kid in Detroit, I lived in Northwest Detroit on a street that had 11 houses on each side of the street, and that's 22 houses. And I knew every single neighbor, name, the kids. We were a community. But you could walk next door and walk across the street and talk to your neighbors through the windows. That was very different than what we have here in Franklin. It's a whole different environment. As to the charter, as Pam said, the charter was created in 1954, and this is 2020. There are things that have to be changed in the charter. There are things that are embarrassing in the charter, and there are things that our village attorney has brought to us and said are illegal and need to be modified. And in 2016, I think we had about 9 charter amendments that we took to the voters, and they approved all but 1 or 2 of them. They were necessary maintenance issues, and there will continue to be those. Do we respect the charter? Absolutely. We agree that it's a logical body that was developed in a different time, but it needs to be respected and yet modified and addressed as need be. I'm committed to that. We all are.
So I know that we're really close to our target of half an hour. In fact, I think we're a couple minutes over. So I want to just, in terms of wrapping up for me, just say thank you, everybody. I think we've got 18 live people, which is amazing. And thank you so much for jumping in and asking questions. We're going to keep doing these, so I'm looking forward to the next time. And if you've got some topics that you want us to dive deep in, send Mark, send Mike, or send me an email, and we'll set that up. So thank you.
Thank you. I've enjoyed this.
I have too. Thanks, everybody. We look forward to our next round coming up next week, and that, I think, is next Wednesday at 7 o'clock.
I believe so.
I believe so. We'll post it. You'll all. Thanks for your attention.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.